regions, and with mortgage rates in no certain trend, real estate auctions are becoming increasingly popular. Once thought of as the selling place of last resort for unwanted or foreclosed properties, it's now making headway as the real estate trend of the 90s. Steve Young has this report.
Sold to the highest bidder. The auctioneer's chant takes on a whole new meaning in today's rattled real estate market. Buying and selling property at auction may be the real estate marketing phenomenon of the 90s.
It's really the free market at its best, because what it does is it brings a willing seller together with willing buyers.
There are advantages for both sides. The seller can control the date, terms, and conditions of the sale. He will move the property quickly, and a shorter selling period will cut holding costs. Definite advantages over having the property sit out a languishing real estate market.
Mostly what happens is you put a price on it, and it stays on the market for a long time. And then you lower the price and lower the price and lower the price until you find the market. Well, the auction is just the opposite of that.
The buyer is at an advantage because she knows the seller wants to sell. She'll get a fairer market value on the property because the price is set by other would-be home buyers in the bidding process and not the seller. And she'll know the time frame and terms of purchase before bidding. The buyer should arm herself with lots of information before the auction. Read up on the offerings, visit the property, check out the offering statement, floor plans, and auction inventory.
$160,000.
It's good to have several choices in case someone else outbid you on your first pick. Finally, observe an auction before you attempt to bid at one. It can be an overwhelming experience for the uninitiated.
$225,000.
That's your money. Steve Young, CNN, New York.
CNBC is our toll-free number. Write it down and use it, please, if you have a question about today's topic, which, Bruce, is what?
Real estate auctions. We're going to tell you everything you need to know to find a bargain, how to bid. You can't play the game if you don't know the rules.
And don't raise your hand early. Do you have a special guest in this regard?
We have Don Hanna, who is president of U.S. Auctions, Inc. He knows all about real estate auctions. And if the last name sounds familiar, it's because he is the father of Daryl Hannah, the movie star of Splash.
Made a big splash, indeed.
Even with us.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Report. We're talking about real estate auctions today, and you can contact us at 1-800-752-CNBC if you'd like to participate. How would you like to buy a new condominium or a house for half price? The possibility of that kind of deal is the attraction of real estate auctions. But can you really get such bargains? We'll find out from our guest today, Don Hanna, president of U.S. Auction, Inc. Don, we're delighted to have you here, and I understand the phones are lighted up already.
Terrific. Thanks, Bruce.
There seem to be a lot of real estate auctions going on right now. The government is selling off properties. Some of the banks or developers who have problems are selling off. What is the problem with all of these properties? Are they in fact distressed, or should we be looking at them?
Well, absolutely, you should be looking at them. What's happening is the advent of the real estate auction and the increase in the number of real estate auctions in the United States is really a terrific thing, because it's a great thing. It's the free market at its best. It allows both the buyers and the sellers to come together in a format that confirms the price at the very time that the auction takes place for the real estate that's being purchased.
There's a lot of controversy about auctions. Some builders say that it's going to come back to haunt us. It's almost like the rebates and so forth that car dealers have been giving, and it's going to be very hard to go back to a normal pricing structure. How do you feel about that? I know you're in the auction business.
Well, I don't think so. I think, as I said just a minute ago, it's really the free market at its best. When you think about it, everything of value except real estate is sold in some form of auction. The stock market is an auction, when you think of it.
That's true.
Of course, rare art for many years has been sold at auction, and horses and construction equipment. Why not real estate? So that's
we have a caller ready for you. We have Steve from Michigan. And Steve, what is your question for our guest today?
Yes, I was wondering if when you get your land from an auction, if you get a general warranty deed that would preclude a covenant or servitude or contingent remainder from retaking possession of the conveyance.
No, you would purchase your property, whether it be land or a home, under the same conditions that you would if you bought it through traditional real estate methods.
Don, last year, hypothetical question, my neighbors and I each bought some condominiums in a new development. We paid, say, $200,000 a piece for them. Now, all of a sudden, I find out my developer has decide to auction off the unsold units starting at $100,000 apiece. What does that do to the value of my unit?
Well, that's a good question. It really, actually, we get asked that all the time. It helps it, and I'll tell you why. Let's say a developer has 100 units, and he sold 60 of them, and he has 40 that he's still holding, and it may take him 2 or 3 years to move those out. He could discount the price of those units by selling them at an auction in 60 days instead of holding them for the 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And by doing that, the buyer gets a good buy, and the seller, of course, takes advantage of discounting his price because he doesn't have to pay the holding price. What does it do to the homeowner? The homeowner, of course, that's already bought, maybe at a higher price, he now has neighbors, and now he's not competing against the seller, the contractor or the builder, for his resale value. So his
but
resale
hasn't that
value
kind of
comes back.
established that the price now is not $200,000 as they were originally sold for, but possibly, say, $120,000, $130,000? Doesn't that pull down the value of all those properties?
Well, it may do that temporarily, but then once all the units are sold, then they can start really coming back to what the value should be.
Okay, we have another question. We have Art from Chicago on the phone. And Art, what is your question about auctions today?
Yes, I was just wondering, should you already have your financing lined up so, you know, the auction, I guess, would go through a lot smoother, or should you wait till, you know, the property is purchased? That's primarily it.
Most auction companies, and certainly we do, offer financial packages. And the way we do it is we have maybe 8 or 9 companies and 8 or 9 choices of mortgage type of options that the buyer can have right at the auction site. The seller or the buyer could, if he wants to, provide his own financing, but generally we find that they take the financing packages we make available.
Now, that was a good question. For the benefit of our viewers, kind of walk me very quickly through an auction. I've seen an ad in the paper that says something's going to be auctioned off at a real estate auction. What's the next step? What do I do?
Well, the next step is to go to the project and take a look at it. Let's say if it's a condominium project,
Yeah.
take a look at it and go through it. All of the paperwork will be there. The people that will be there will take you through the different units. And then what you should do is compare it to other things in the locale. Take a look at the other condominiums that are available. Take a look at the square footage that's offered and the amenities that are offered.
Comparison shop, just as though
Exactly.
you're buying a house.
Absolutely, the very same thing.
Don, if I'm going to an auction, how much money do I have to bring with me?
Well, generally, you don't have to bring any money with you. Some auction companies require a certified check for maybe 5%. Some don't. In our case, we don't. But what you have to do is have in mind what you want to spend, and don't go over that.
We have another question for you. We have Alan from Long Island. Alan, what is your question for our guest today?
Yes, my question is for a first-time buyer, which I am. I'm inspired to normally go the normal route of speaking to real estate agents and whatnot. I have no experience in this area, but when I see these late-night gurus on TV, real estate gurus say about foreclosures, etc., etc., it raises my eyebrows. I'm wondering, is this a similar scenario where these are foreclosures at auctions, or is it just people that aren't in foreclosure, they want to sell? What exactly does the auction give a buyer? Where does the specialty lie?
Good question. Well, of course, auctions have been around for throughout history. And what you find is that the word auction connotates sometimes a distressed property. But we're finding more and more is that non-distressed properties are coming on the market. Now, there are, as you say, the late-night gurus that are talking about some of the foreclosures and things like that. But the type of auctions that I represent and others of us in the business really are the non-distressed. There may be some financial distress, but they're not board-ups or wrecked houses. This is a great opportunity for the buyer to take advantage of, in the case, an oversupply of product.
Alan, let me add on to what Don just said. If you're buying at auction in a condominium project, one of the things you need to know is how many units have already been sold, how strong is the developer, because you're depending on the developer for the units he owns to keep on making his maintenance payments, to keep on paying the taxes, getting the snow shoveled, and so forth and so on. If you buy into a condominium project with a weak developer, you may end up with all of your neighbors finding that the developer isn't carrying his end of the freight, and the balance of you all have to pick it up. So get a financial statement. That's good advice. So that everybody knows all about auctions, I'd like you to define a couple of terms for me.
Okay.
What's an absolute auction? What's a minimum bid? What's a choice auction? What's a seller's reserve?
Okay.
Take them in any order.
All right. An absolute auction is a technique where the seller says, I'll sell my product, and he may take 1/3, let's say, of the number of condominiums or homes that he has, and I'll take anything over $1 for those houses, and so that I will confirm it in advance that I will sell it no matter what price I get.
Okay.
A seller's reserve. Let's say that in this case, in this technique, the seller will say, well, I will have a reserve, and once I pass that reserve, I may confirm right then, or I may wait 48 hours to confirm the fact that I'm going to allow you to buy it at that price. Your other question
minimum
was,
bid.
Minimum bid, okay. In that case, you might set on a condominium that may be sold for $200,000. You may say the minimum bid is $80,000, and above that, I might confirm it right there, or wait 48 hours to confirm that I sell the product.
And the last term was a choice auction. What's a choice auction?
Well, choice is used when you have, for instance, let's say, again, in a condominium product, you have maybe 10 one-bedroom and 10 two-bedrooms, and the floor plans are just about the same.
Right.
What you do in that case is you may open up the auction and you say all the one-bedrooms are up, and you take the highest bid, and then the winner of the highest bid has his choice of whether it's on the 4th floor or the 10th floor. Or
so he gets any one-bedroom unit at all.
Any one-bedroom he wants. And so therefore maybe somebody likes the view over the ocean or over the waterways or whatever versus the parking lot.
We have another call. We have Ray from Florida. And Ray, what is your question for our guest today?
Yes. My question is to the guest is, usually when you go into an auction, how do you know that you're not paying what was above appraisal amount? How do you know that you have not got an appraisal of the property? You go in there as a fresh new person, and you're there in the auction, you want to buy something.
That's a good question.
Well, I think it comes back to what Bruce said at the very beginning of the show, and that is homework. You want to do your homework, and you want to go and see the project that the house or whatever you're going to buy, and then take a look at what's out there. And you have to do kind of your own appraisal. On the other hand, there will be at the site, I'm sure, most of the information about what the current value of the house or the prior asking price of it was.
Ray, that's an especially good question because at an auction you can, in fact, pay more than the appraised value. And when we talk about appraised value, are we confusing the developer's asking price? If he said this was a $150,000 unit, it's entirely possible if everybody gets heated up and they all want that one unit, that it could sell for more than $150,000. That's what makes the developers, and makes Don very happy when that sort of thing happens. I'd like to invite you to stay with us. We're talking to Don Hanna, who is president of U.S. Auction, Inc., about real estate auctions. We're telling you everything you need to know. On the Real Estate Report, we're talking about real estate auctions with Don Hanna, president of U.S. Auction, Inc., and we have Mark from Michigan on the phone. And Mark, what is your question for our guest today?
All the times that I see real estate auctions listed in the newspaper, the properties are all listed by LIBOR numbers and other numbers, which I don't have the time to research and find the properties to see if I'm interested in buying them. Is there a way to wade through all this and find the location of the properties easier?
Yes, I think the type of auctions that you'll see more and more, the type of auctions at least that we do, the type of ad that we put in the newspaper is very much like the ad for any other type of project. And all the information is right in the ad as to exactly what's being sold, how to find the location that it's, where it's located.
Don, is a seller's reserve kind of a heads-I-win, tails-you-lose deal? Because you're going to spend time inspecting the property. You have to bring a certified check down. You have to have your lawyer probably wade through all the condominium documents. Then you have to show up at the auction. You have to go through the whole bidding process. And when you're all done, the next day the developer says, I don't like any of those prices. I'm not accepting any of them. There was an auction recently in Connecticut where I think something like 75 units were sold, and the developer rejected all the bids. Isn't that kind of unfair to the people who are bidding?
Well, I'm not familiar with that particular auction, but I think that's probably the exception rather than the rule. The seller that most of us work with are willing sellers, and they want to move their product. And so therefore, if there's enough people in the audience, the market is made.
Don, at this point, we kind of always like to sum up what we've been talking about, things to remember. And I know when we talked about this beforehand, you emphasized that people should inspect the property before they bid. They should then decide what they want to spend. You recommend to take out a 3x5 card, big fat marker, write down your maximum price. Find out, is there a buyer's premium? Or you're going to have another commission tacked on to the seller's premium. You also said, find out Is there an absolute auction? That means whatever I bid, if I'm the high bidder, I'll get it. Also, is there a minimum reserve? Where do I have to start bidding? Maybe it's too high and I shouldn't even bother showing up. And lastly, is there a seller's reserve, as we were just discussing? Is there a possibility I go through this whole exercise and then find out, no, I didn't get it? I want to thank you for being with us. I think real estate auctions, as you say, are increasingly going to be the way to market property. Thanks for being with us today.